Hi, and welcome to Major in Adulting, the podcast where I talk about the transition from uni or trade to work, life, and everything in between in your adulting world. I'm Romaine, mum of 4 young Gen Z adults, and after more than 2 decades helping people and organisations navigate change, I've learned that adulting isn't a finish line. It's a process of learning, adjusting, and showing up time and time again. Each week here, I explore honest stories, practical lessons, and some real conversations to help you build confidence, direction, and resilience at work and beyond in your adulting life. Now, before we get into today's conversation, I want to remind you what this podcast is really about. It's a space where we explore, as I said, the real and unpolished transition into adulthood. But it's also about the choices, the doubts, the pivots, and the small wins that shape who you're becoming. Each episode is designed to give you something you can take with you, whether that's clarity, courage, or simply a reminder that you're not doing this alone. We talk about decisions, identity, purpose, and what it takes to build a life that feels like yours. Today's episode is a great example of that transition in action, and I'm super excited to share it with you. Louis, welcome to the podcast, and I'm really grateful for joining me today.
Thank you, Romaine. I'm very excited to be with you today.
Yeah, thank you. I know I'm blown away each time I do an interview and I approach my Gen Zs, as I say, and have the conversation. And they so willingly, like you today, are giving up your time to do this with me. So I really appreciate that. Our listeners are going to really enjoy hearing your story. And for a little bit of context, Louis, you finished VCE 5 years ago and you've been studying mechanical engineering at Monash University in Victoria. And
Yes, I
you're
have.
now on the cusp of launching a career in the Australian Navy. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a bit more detail. But for our listeners, you're a boy from Tasmania and you're going to talk about the officer interviews. I'd love to touch on the psychometric testing because that is something that really scares me.
Right.
It's been a journey, and today we're going to unpack it all.
Sounds good.
Now, yeah, cool. Now, before we dive into the timeline, there's something I like to say to the young adults as I'm learning more and more about you. Your early career isn't just about choosing a job. It's really about noticing who you're becoming based on where you are today. And I want to talk not just about what you've done, but about the values, the insights, and the moments that have shaped you to get you where you are today. So I'm going to start with your education and career. You finished VCE 5 years ago, and I mentioned you've been studying mechanical engineering, but do you want to share a little bit more about what that's been like and what
Yeah.
you've enjoyed?
Yeah. So, well, I'll start in high school, because I initially was quite a poor math student. Um, and it's funny now that I'm studying engineering and going into a very focused career, but I was quite a poor math student in high school. Um, and I had a really influential teacher in my year 8 year who sort of told a story about how one of their previous students went from getting D's and E's in maths in year 7 to getting A's and B's in year 12 and then going on to become a commercial airline pilot. And I think that really inspired me, because at that point I was quite an average student, below average student. And throughout my high school years, my maths slowly progressed. And I think that was a big motivator. And I'd say by the time I was in year 12, I really developed a liking for maths. I had a complete turnaround, and that sort of propelled me into engineering, because I also enjoyed physics as well. So
Wow.
that's when I made my choice to go down a path of studying engineering at uni. I was just always have been fascinated by building things and designing things and drawing things as well. But yeah, that teacher was a particular catalyst for that.
Wow.
Uh,
So that's amazing. And obviously, it's a light bulb moment for you that changed
yeah,
and ended up where you are today. And did that
100%.
just, what did that require you to do differently though? Because you were saying you were average or below average. So what did that just,
I think it was, to be honest, it was just not to lose faith in my abilities and
yeah,
myself. I think it's
that's
all
such an important,
that is because, I do consistent study, but,
yep.
it was just the belief that you can change your outcome,
Mm,
with a positive attitude, really. I think that was the real takeaway that I got from that. So, and that commitment is something I've used, I think, um, throughout that next chapter of my life.
throughout.
So,
Yeah.
um, so I started in engineering in 2021,
Yep.
um, and yeah, immediately loved it. Uh, I studied at Monash since 2022, um,
Okay. Is
and
that when
so
you moved from Tasmania
yeah,
to,
so I moved from Tasmania in 2021 and studied 1 year at the University of Queensland for
okay.
in engineering, and then I transferred to Monash.
Okay.
But it was a big change moving away from home,
Yeah.
especially to Queensland, which is quite a fair flight away.
Yeah.
Um, so that because of that, I moved back to Melbourne because I had some friends in Victoria.
Okay.
It made the distance, more manageable. The move away
Right.
from home a bit more manageable.
Yep.
And I've since studied at Monash from 2022 to now to 2025, and I'm
Okay.
just finishing at the end of this year. I've really enjoyed the Monash engineering course. I think there's a lot of group work,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of uh, I mean, engineering as a whole is problem solving. So if
Yeah.
you enjoy that, and I'm speaking to people in high school, if you enjoy problem solving, then it's a great degree. It's a great course to do because it teaches you a lot about how to think. It's a lot of maths and science, but from a broader perspective, I think it teaches you a lot about how to think about problems and go about solving them in a very logical process. Um,
Process. Yeah.
so yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Monash, and particularly choosing some electives that are outside of the planned course progression. And I found myself going towards energy based electives, so renewable energy was a
Okay.
big
Yep.
focus of mine. And I think in 2021 I sort of gained a particular interest in reading about renewable energy solutions and in particular
Yep.
nuclear energy
Yep.
for commercial use. Um, and I think that sort of started this trajectory, which we'll talk about later, the move towards a job in the Navy. But that was a big part of my decision making was I wanted to do something. I wanted to work in a sector and a field that you know, had a positive outcome,
Mm.
and providing clean energy, I thought would do that. And I was also very interested in the engineering involved in nuclear reactors. Um,
Ah,
so that was
those two
why,
elements.
yeah, those two elements, and that's why I chose mechanical engineering
Right.
because it's broad and it means you can specialize in anything really. And for me, that was energy. So that went into my decision for my major. And in 2022, I joined, due to my interest in nuclear energy, I
Mhm.
joined the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation,
Okay.
um, which is a government body that it's an organisation where they hold meetings and annual events and forums, and they bring in experts on nuclear energy, and they do webinars and talk about energy for Australia, nuclear energy for Australia,
Mm-hmm.
and talk about new research in the field. And so I joined that because I was quite interested in what was going on in that space, specifically in Australia, because we don't have a lot
Mm.
going up, but it was sort of the one body that seemed to be talking about it. And so I gravitated towards that. And so, probably around 2020, end of 2023, I was thinking I want to get into nuclear engineering. That's kind of where I was at that point.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll just leave it there for that question. But that's sort of my journey from high school through to
To
2023.
uni.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that body that you joined, what was there networking as well as just building that, I guess, getting more information and getting deeper
Yeah.
into that area?
Yeah, it was network. The networking was available.
Right, okay.
Unfortunately,
Or
there
was this
for
during COVID?
well,
No,
it was
post-COVID?
after COVID. It was
Yeah,
2022, but
yeah.
unfortunately, they hold most of their assemblies and their seminars in New South Wales in Sydney.
Ah, okay. All right.
So for me in Victoria and sometimes Tasmania, it's
Yeah,
hard
okay.
to go to, you know, to be there in person.
Yeah.
And so what was on offer for me was really I'd watch the webinars after they'd been posted on their website. I'd use that as a platform to, do my own research and get to know what's happening in the field through their news forum, which was really helpful for me. And they had, they'd send you emails about new events happening in the industry, etc. So um, that was really great, and it's something that I mean we'll probably talk about this more, but something that you can put on your resume as a
Yes.
part of this organization. Um, and I certainly use that in future interviews
Well, I
because it
think it
shows,
also, yeah, go.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
you,
shows that you're passionate about
yeah,
that topic, that field.
yeah, I think absolutely. Like it shows your commitment and passion as well.
Mm.
Which of course employers are looking for to see that in their new hires and recruits. Um, Now, so that's 2023. What's
Yes.
happened between then and you're now finished or finishing your qualification? What's happened in those year and a half,
Mm.
2 years? My maths, see, Louis, my maths is not great.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of 2023, I was a bit unsure of where to go. I think many people in engineering, you're struggling to find an internship. You're just wanting to get
Right.
some, because it's quite competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, especially, I didn't really know where I was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I heard about, and I'd done a bit of reading about AUKUS, and at that time, it was probably a year old, the agreement. Um,
And AUKUS is just for our listeners.
Yeah, AUKUS is an agreement, a trilateral agreement between Australia, the US, and the UK,
Uh-huh.
primarily focused on joint operations together and, security, uh, shared information and security across all the partners. And also, a major pillar of it is establishing Australia's nuclear submarine capability.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that comes in the form of buying US nuclear submarines and
Yep.
also developing and building our own with the UK. So I'd heard about that, and
Yeah.
obviously it relates to nuclear engineering. So I did a bit more research, and I had a friend in the Air Force who spoke very highly of that of her career. And so I was interested in, looking at a job in the Defence Force.
Mm-hmm.
And early 2024, I made an application, and it's the process it was quite a long process and quite daunting at the start, and I didn't fully think that I'd go through with it because it's sort of that it's something that you just apply, and then you could wait 3 to 4 months and that was my thinking at the time. I just wait some time and then maybe I'll just find something else. But I made an application
Mhm.
and I let it sit for the
Yeah.
time being. So I made my application, and the first step to that is a job assessment. That's what they call it in defense.
Okay.
And it takes place online, and it's kind of just a general quiz to kind of test your critical thinking ability, your reasoning, spatial reasoning as well. So it's kind of an all round. It's not quite an IQ test, but it simulates that, and
Okay.
it gives the recruiter sort of an idea of what jobs you might be suitable for. So that was the first process, the first step in my application was
Uh-huh.
completing that assessment. And I was terrified of doing that because I knew that, well, I thought that if I did poorly um, and that I wouldn't be any good at it, and that would mean I'd be ruled out from the
That's it.
job roles that I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And how did
I,
you prepare for that, Louis? Like, how did
there's practice questions you can find online,
is
and
there? Okay.
if you type in like spatial reasoning tests, um, a lot of it's just like finding the patterns in things, or they
Okay.
usually have a few categories. So spatial reasoning, where you have to find patterns in shapes,
Oh, I
and
know
then
those ones.
numerical, yeah, yeah, and then numerical reasoning. So that have like a gridded, sort of like a Sudoku square with numbers.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Not Sudoku, but you'd have to find the pattern with
The
numbers
pattern.
to
And
fill out.
that's
Yeah,
timed? Each
yeah,
question
it's
is
all
timed,
timed.
isn't it? Yeah.
So you get, I think, I'm trying to think of how many minutes you get. There'd be 35 questions, and I think you get 20 minutes or so. So
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe 15 minutes. I can't. Some. It's not a long test, and you're not expected to get to the end of it, because if you get to
Right.
the end of it and you completed them all correctly, that means, I mean, you're amazing. You could just
Genius zone.
straight to the top. Yeah, chief of defense. No, but if you so you're not, it's designed so you don't finish, and it's meant to be quite hard and you under time pressure.
Okay.
um but there's also, so there's spatial reasoning, numerical reasoning, and then there's they'll have a word and you have to define it, or choose, an antonym or a synonym of that word based off
Uh-huh.
4 options. So it is kind of, it's multiple choice. um so it's not like an extended response or anything. I was kind of terrified of that, because I've been very science and maths focused. I was kind of scared of the written component as well, and also the spatial reasoning stuff. Because although I'm quite a spatial learner, doing
Yeah.
it quickly under time conditions was stressful for me.
It's different.
So I did a
Yeah, of
few
course.
practice tests, but I also learned that you can retake the test in
Oh,
6 months' time. So if you're really unhappy with how you
okay.
did, you
Yeah.
can retake it again. So
Okay. So it's not truly an eliminating, but
it's
you
not
don't wanna keep yeah, okay.
it's not truly an eliminating thing, and the main thing is don't stress too much, because you actually do better than you expect. So after I
Yeah.
finished mine, I was terrified that had done poorly, because I only answered like 25 questions or so out of, or 26 or so, something like that. Um,
That sounds
but
pretty good to me.
it's
26
all
sounds
right.
about right.
I
Yeah.
can't remember the specifics, but it was, I thought I did quite poorly.
Yeah.
But at the end of that, you get a phone call. It's called your U session, and that this is
Mhm.
the next part of the process,
Mhm.
where someone from Defence Force recruiting will call you up, and they'll discuss your job assessment and how you went, and then
Mhm.
talk about your preferences and what job paths you're wanting to get into, and whether or not they think you'd be suitable for that based on how
Okay.
your assessment went. So that
Okay.
was good for me, because it was a good confirmation that I'd actually done okay. Um, and every job that I wanted to do was available to me.
Oh,
Um, so I had three. You get 3 choices when you make an
yeah.
application with Defence, and my choices were 2 Navy, 1 Air Force, all
Okay.
mechanical officer roles.
Yeah.
And the difference between an officer role and a general entry is, um, really, you're kind of an officer role. You go in as a with a higher rank, because it assumes that you've taken some extra tertiary education,
Occasion. Uh-huh.
usually, and
Yeah.
it also means that you're sort of. in charge of a team. So
Okay.
you kind of graduate to a level where when you come into the Defence Force, you're already kind of overseeing people, um,
Ah, that's
and
pretty cool.
you're expected to. General entry and officers are expected to. They're held to the same standards. It's just that officers um, generally have
A
another
qualification. A qual.
qualification, exactly,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they're kind of responsible for um, filling out extra paperwork and um, doing sort of more managerial roles, I guess.
Yep.
Um, so those and as an engineer, that's sort of the role that I'd be getting into. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so I had two in the Navy, one in the Air Force, one on the current submarines we had. So it was a mechanical propulsion engineer for the Collins class diesel submarines.
Uh-huh.
One was an aircraft Navy engineering role, and one was an aeronautical Air Force engineering role.
Okay.
And um, after I had that phone call, they basically set me up and said, okay, so now you just have to fill out all of these forms, and there's quite a lot of forms to fill out. So I can't
Of
remember.
course.
It's a long that even that the process of filling out the forms. I remember being quite arduous and intimidating. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's probably just a few primary documents like your birth certificate, your resume, all the ones you'd expect, maybe a passport, Medicare card, the rest, all of that
ID
stuff.
stuff. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Okay.
medical questionnaire as well. So they're
Okay.
very they want to make sure that you're in good health.
Yep.
Um, and once all that's done, then you can move to the next stage of the enlistment process. This bearing
Uh-huh.
in mind, this is for everyone. So any role in the ADF will go
Uh-huh.
through all of this process.
Okay.
Um, and the next stage of the application process is to have your defense interview, your medical examination, and
Okay.
your psychologist interview. And usually
Oh, a
those three,
psychologist interview. Okay.
yeah, and usually
I'm
those
interested in
three
that.
um, happen. These usually happen on the same day, um,
Oh, wow.
depending on. But depending on your availability, they could be moved around. And for me, I had
Okay.
mine on separate days. Um,
Yeah, because it'd be quite brain intensive,
it
especially the
is.
psychology one and the first interview part.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, expecting it to be quite a long day and an intimidating day at that.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I had mine moved around a bit,
Yeah. Okay.
because prior to my interviews, I had to do additional testing, which is something that you might have to do, especially if you're going for a particular role like an aircraft pilot or a helicopter pilot. Um, I've heard that's quite an intense pathway. It requires another level of aptitude testing.
Right.
Um, and for me, I was going into an engineering role, so I had to do an additional maths test and another job assessment. So they'll usually get you to
Oh,
do two,
wow.
I think,
Okay.
just to make sure that your results weren't, forged. So you
Weren't
have to go
rigged the
in.
first time.
Exactly, yeah. So I had to go into ADF careers in the CBD,
Oh, actually
and
on site and
on
do
site,
was that for
yeah,
the
and
second one or for both?
for the second one, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I did my job assessment, and then I also did a writing and a reading assessment. So it
Mhm.
basically, shows that you can write, a page of uh, legible English, and you can interpret a paragraph and respond to it. So,
Okay.
sort of basic year 12 English tick.
Yep.
Um, and then I also did a maths test, which isn't um, going to be part of everyone's assessment. It's just that I had a engineering maths focused
Background. Yeah.
job role that I was applying for, so they got me to do that test. And it was around that time where I changed my preferences because they just released the new role for nuclear submariner engineer officer.
Ah, okay.
So I
So how
changed my
long was that process? Like, how many months are we talking from the
we're
time of your
talking I did
first?
my final assessment at ADF Careers around, I'm gonna say August of 2024, and I
Okay,
started the application. I submitted my first preferences in February of
of
2024.
24. Okay, so it's
So
quite a
it's
few
quite
months.
quite a few months,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so don't be put off by the time it takes, like, to go through this. That's the other thing is, bear in mind that it will take a while. So I changed my number one preference to the submariner nuclear role, which is what I was interested in. That's kind of initially what really made me gravitate towards the Navy was working on
Yeah.
the nuclear submarines.
And that
And
ties back to what you shared about your interest in,
yeah,
well,
in
renewable energy, but in new energies and in nuclear in particular.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And if I could use those skills I developed in the Navy and pivot to commercial nuclear at some point, I'd love to do that. Like that was all part of my thinking. Um,
Wow.
so
Strategy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just I wanted to get a job in that area, and I was looking for opportunities really.
Yeah.
And that's what initially gravitated me towards the Navy. That came to change as I got more into the process. But I changed my number one preference, and then from then, there's a sort of waiting period after you've done all your assessments, and they organise
Mhm.
the dates for your appointment for your defence interview and for your medical examination and
The
psych
psych or
testing.
something.
So
Okay.
I had my psych testing first, and that was done online.
Okay.
So very much like we are now. It was over a Zoom call.
Oh, so it's a person interviewing
Yeah.
you to do your psych
Yes.
testing. Wow.
It's paired with an assessment. So you get
Okay.
before the interview, you have to fill out a questionnaire.
Right. Okay.
And the questionnaire, it's just kind of gives them an indication on, your behavior, how you think, how you respond to different
Situations and
situations, emotional situations. And then they'll basically go through the questionnaire with you in the interview.
okay.
And it's more like a conversation. They just want it's just to establish that you're a normal functioning human being. So that's don't get worried about it. For those people that are, worried about what they might ask, it's okay.
Oh, that'd be me.
Pretty
I'd be
chill.
worried.
Oh yeah. They're not gonna do an in-depth like that will come later, but they won't do an in-depth analysis on you and your flaws and everything like that. So it's just a conversation, making sure that you're, functional human being.
Yeah.
And it's usually a fun chat. And then after that, I had my defense interview in the city. And uh, part of that is it's just an interview with an ADF member. So it
So
can be
one
from
person? So
one
it's one
person, yeah,
person? Okay.
any of the branches. So I had someone from Army interview me, and
Uh-huh.
it's quite straightforward. They give you a big list of things to revise over, and there's
Oh, do they?
a handy booklet that recruiters will give you to look over, and it's
Okay.
really useful to go through and make sure you know everything in that booklet.
Okay.
Best to be over prepared. And I went in there, I think, relatively over prepared. There was things that I didn't know that I was scared about, and all this whole process I was quite intimidated by
Of
because this was
course.
also my first, sort of interview, formal, uh,
Yeah.
in-person interview. I'd done online interviews before for other roles, sort of more casual positions or internship positions, but this was kind of a big deal for me, having to dress up, go to the city. I'm sure that a lot of people my age would kind of
Oh,
resonate with
absolutely
them.
relate to that. I think I can relate to that because
Mm.
I've gone from doing in-person interviews to the last few years doing online interviews. And the first time I did an online was like, I didn't know where to look, what to say, how to
Yeah.
behave. You get the hang of it. And then I recently did a in-person interview and it was actually a little bit weird because yeah,
Mm.
it's a different scenario. But say I think what you're saying is totally totally normal, especially the first time that you're doing it as well. So,
Yeah, it is. It did feel strange, but it's quite it's 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 a pretty relaxed environment, I'd say. The one
okay,
my experience was, and especially if you go in, knowing the
your
main thing
stuff.
they want, knowing your stuff, and the main thing they want you to know is why. Why are you joining? You need to have a
Yeah,
good reason. It can't just
yeah,
be because of the money, because that's not going to motivate you through training. That's not going
true.
to motivate you. You need to actually have a valid reason for joining. And that's what they're really focused on. So make sure this is the number one takeaway, really, is make sure you know why you're doing it. And you're doing it because you want to um, lead people. And that's the
Your
response they're looking.
purpose. This is where your
Yeah.
purpose thing comes in.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very driven, and they want people that are purpose driven. They want people
Mm,
that are excited about their job, um, because they know that uh, a career in the defense will probably be difficult and require a bit of sacrifice. So they they really want people that know why they want to be there and are motivated to be there. Intrinsic motivation. So they're
yeah,
motivated because of what they do. Um,
yeah.
so that the questions that I was asked in my defense interview were quite standard, everything you'd expect on the booklet that they give you. So if you know that, you're prepared. And then other than that, it's, what makes you qualified for this role? Have you, what's your leadership experience? What do you think? What's the difference between a leader and a manager? And they'll
Oh, I
grill you
love
on
that
that.
question. They asked you that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love
Um,
it.
and 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 showing leadership or showing that you have the potential to be a leader is a big
Yeah,
deal.
yeah,
So
okay.
those are the things you want to focus on. There's other, they'll have a whole list of a plethora of things that you should learn, um, which it's a good idea to know. But I'd say that those things I mentioned before are the most important. Because yeah, if you have intrinsic motivation and you know why you want to join, I think you'll do well. The
But I think this really comes back to that thing we were talking about is around it's really important for you, I think your generation in particular, this purpose and value alignment with yourself and what you actually want to do
mm,
in terms of starting out in your career.
it is, yeah. I think they've
Yeah.
done well um, to adapt to it. Yeah, to make sure that they're finding people that are, um, that think like that, that have a purpose that they want to fulfill, and
Yeah.
uh, that they're motivated to do the job that they're applying for. And you get a lot of that in. I think everyone in defense loves it because you know, they've been through that process and they know why they're joining. It's a great way of vetting people because
Yeah, yeah.
otherwise you're going to get people that aren't suited for that career path. So I'd say if you want to work in defense, make sure you have an interest in it and you're motivated to do it. Because you want to lead, you want to help people, um, all of that. So
And can I ask, just before we
yeah.
move on, can you share a little bit about what your purpose is?
Mm. So I think my purpose at this point
Yeah,
was, and this is kind of around the time that my motivation for joining changed, because initially it was very heavily focused on, the technical side of the career. So
mhm,
learning about nuclear systems, nuclear propulsion, all the engineering stuff, which it fascinated me, but is somewhat removed from what Navy actually is. And what it is really is that you need to be able to lead people and you need
mhm.
to be a team player and you need to enjoy helping people and mentoring people and making sure that they grow and um, supporting them.
Mm,
And that's kind of what changed about my motivation is that I slowly moved away from what initially drew me to the role, which was the technical side, the
yeah,
engineering side. And as I learnt more and talked to previous submariners and read about previous servicemen and women, um, the how they showed bravery and leadership in critical situations was so
Oh,
inspiring. Those leadership traits and how they've helped people and made an impact has been what has motivated me to want to join the Navy, and be
oh,
an officer and help the younger sailors. So and that's kind of like what they're looking for. They're looking for someone that wants um to, in my case, be an officer or be a seaman and just lead people and show leadership and help others and be
oh,
compassionate about the people they're working with, to show enthusiasm in their work because they enjoy what they're doing, because they have a purpose, because they're motivated by helping people, um, and they love serving their country. So
um,
that's what I pivoted towards
yeah,
through research of this role, and I
yeah,
was very fortunate to have a lot of connections. I made a lot of connections in Navy with previous sailors who'd
okay,
worked on submarines, and I spoke to them over the phone and texted them and emailed. I had email correspondence with someone a few years down the track in the job role that I wanted, and I
yeah,
was talking to him about his day-to-day life, what he's doing to gain an appreciation for the job role, what it will look like, but also what his motivations were, and what he's found that he's enjoyed the most in Navy. And it's
mhm,
usually the satisfaction of working and helping people,
people,
and it's people focused. So
yeah.
that's what I sort of shifted and pivoted towards, and I started and the defense interview kind of helped me along that path. But
And you
so
would have been able to then highlight that as part of your experience in your
yeah,
interviews. Yeah, and that would have come through, no doubt. As I can see, it's coming through just in you talking to me.
yeah. Well, this is kind of the presentation I gave in my next interview. So we'll talk about the OSB, which
Okay,
is the one
all
that
right.
comes after. But in the defense, I sort of gave a very rudimentary answer to this. I would say it's not as developed as it is now, but um, it was okay, and I think I I, uh, I did all right, but it's not really graded. The defense interview is just another tick. So
Yes,
everything on that day, the medical, the psych, and the defense interview, they're all just tick ticking the box to get to the next stage.
yeah.
Um, and
Validating what they are seeing and hearing about you,
yeah,
and
yeah.
now, yeah, processing that. Okay.
And so for general entry, what will happen with you is you have your defense interview, you have your medical examination, and you have your psych testing. And then you'll submit your resume, updated resume. If you're graduating high school, you'll give your ATAR as well, um,
Okay.
so they can read over your academic results.
Mhm.
And they will do that in the defense interview as well. If you're just graduating, or if you're 17 or 18, they'll have a look over your ATAR. They'll go through that, and your resume. Um, and then from that, you'll get you might get an offer, and then from there you'll go to your respective branch training, initial training block. So for Army, that could be Kapuka. For Navy, it's Cerberus in Victoria. So yeah,
Never heard
from
of
general
that. Where's
entry,
that? Where's
Cerberus.
Sanford's? Yeah.
It's like on the peninsula.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah. So so for general entry, it kind of ends there. I think there might be more testing for specific roles, but that's sort of where you get to for general entries. Your defense interview is kind of your the last thing to do. You
Right.
have a PFA after that, so a fitness test, um, and yeah, in truth, that's your last sort of piece of assessment.
Assessment.
Um, yeah, so you'll do, I can't remember the fitness requirements, but it might be a 45-minute 5K or a 12-minute 2K or something like that.
Okay. And do you
And
know
then
which
some
it is,
push-ups.
or do you just find that on the day?
I think
Just see.
You might have options for fitness, for running. So you could have
Okay.
an option of doing a 2 kilometer run that's under 12 minutes, or a 5 kilometer that's under 45, or a beep test that's a 6.5, or something like that.
Okay.
So you have options for your running, and then you have a standard number of sit-ups and push-ups
Okay.
and that you have to do based on your age range, and your gender. So
Gender.
it's
Okay.
um, it's based off that, and it's I think Navy's the only branch that doesn't have that. You still have to do fitness training when you're at basic training, but you don't have
Yeah.
a day where you do a fitness assessment.
Okay.
So bear that in mind. It's good to do some training, and there's an ADF app that helps you get ready for that assessment as well. So if that's something you're worried about, you can download the app, and that will help you on your fitness journey.
I'd like to tap into, you talked about your discovery process that you went through to understand what this life in the Navy was really like, particularly
Mm.
the role that you were going for or the roles that you were particularly interested in. How did you make those connections? And can you share, how did you find these people?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great question, because I think a lot of people in my position when I was in the application process had the same issue.
Yeah.
Navy are quite good about setting you up with people that you can talk to. Um,
Okay.
Defense Force recruiting is made up of a whole bunch of different servicemen and women who have served in each of the three branches in different roles, and they'll put you in contact with someone. Say, I was interested in a submariner role, so they'll put you in
Okay.
contact with some submariners in an officer role, in my case, that I could talk to an email and have a phone call with about, what was basic training like, what were you doing on a day-to-day basis,
Right.
what's why did you want to join, what does sea service look like, um, what does, all the detailed questions beyond that, which you need to have an understanding of, like, uh, an understanding of what military law is, Defense Disciplinary Act. So it's quite good because it gives you access to those people, and you can chat to them.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate, because my mum's cousin was a submariner, um,
Oh,
for the Australian Navy, and I also have a few uncles that were also in the Navy as submariners. So I was very
it's in the
fortunately
genes,
placed.
it's in the blood there,
Yeah,
Louis.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And so I talked to all three of them, and
Yeah.
about their service lives, and um and they also put me in contact with people who were still in the service or had recently retired,
Hmm.
um that had that were, still fairly active in the defense space. And I was very fortunate to speak to, I think I spoke to a lieutenant at ADF Careers. I
Hmm.
spoke to a sub lieutenant who I used to go to uni with,
Oh, wow.
and who was a year ahead of me at university, and he'd just joined the Navy. So I spoke to him.
Yeah.
I spoke to a lieutenant commander who was one of my uncles, and he'd served on submarines. I spoke to another lieutenant who was studying abroad in the US on the submarine pathway. And I spoke to a commander that I got in contact with through one of my uncles. And then I also very fortunate to speak to Commodore Peter Scott, who
Oh,
recently
wow. Yeah.
retired from
Yeah.
the ADF. And he was a real inspiration, because he'd had such a, rich, I mean, all of these people were very inspiring. But he had recently released a memoir, and I read that memoir. This is probably late 2024, early 2025. Um, and the memoir is called Running Deep. I'd recommend reading it if you're interested in submarines or just Navy in general, or it's quite relevant for any service role,
Well, I
because
was
it
going to
talks
say it's
about
probably relevant
sacrifice.
for, yeah, it's probably relevant for anyone really in
Mm,
whatever. life pathway you choose, because I'm sure there are key takeaways that can help everyone.
Yeah,
Um,
there
yeah.
are. And so I read that book, and that was a major inspiration,
Oh.
because he talked through his, when he was a captain during a flood on board HMAS Deshano in the early 2000s, so an Australian submarine,
Mm-hmm.
and 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 that's just one of the trials that he went through and had to learn and command and lead people in a very difficult situation. And he
Mm.
goes on. He talked about other scenarios and uh, other moments in his life throughout his service life, which I thought was fascinating. And so all those conversations put together, I had a big book where I wrote down. I'd have a big book of questions, and I'd
Yeah.
just call them up and I'd just answer it. I'd ask the questions and just be writing during the
Writing.
phone call. And
Yep.
I still have that book. And I'd read Peter Scott's memoir, and I'd read stuff from the ADF website. This is all part of the revision for the next assessment, which was the Officer Selection Board. And this is kind
Ah,
of
okay.
for officer roles. It's kind of um, presented as the big interview that you want to prepare for. So from late November,
No.
when I had my defense interview, all the
Yep.
way through to Feb of
Yep.
2025
25.
of this
Yep.
year,
Yep.
I had been doing a lot of research and calling and asking um, uh, questions of people that had served,
Yeah. Your
and
discovery process.
doing my
Yep.
own research in order to be prepared for this interview. And it's quite a
Okay.
holistic interview, and
Okay.
they do a good job of expressing that you need to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think if you take that advice seriously, you'll do well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was to say I was stressed is an understatement. I did so I filled out two massive books in preparation, and I don't you don't need to um think that it's the be all and end all, because it's not. Your application um isn't dropped or picked up based on that interview, because that decision's made by someone in Canberra
Okay.
after the interview is complete. But it is quite an important interview, because it gives them an impression of how capable you are as a leader, and
Yeah.
why. And it's an officer selection board, so it's making sure that you're capable in the technical aspects of your role, and that you understand what your job is going to entail and all the difficulties that come with it, as well as getting an understanding of who you are as a person. So
Mm.
um, they do a good job of, um, you know, setting that expectation that it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a bit of an arduous interview. But if you're well prepared, you'll do well.
I think part of your stress that you said is not just the interview process, but I know what I've heard from listening to you for the months before when you decided that, you wanted to get into the Navy in a particular pathway, that your discovery, the interview process and assessments that you've been through, it's really now honing. This is
Mm,
really what I want to do.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is. I think you're at the point now where this is what you want,
Yeah.
and you're really. I was very motivated by. I'm almost there. I
Yeah.
just need to get across it, and this is what I want to do. So it's actually learning is quite
Yeah.
enjoyable,
Yeah.
um, and it was through that process that I really developed and pivoted my motivation,
Uh-huh.
which I talked about earlier, in from the technical aspect to the more personal leadership um, uh, side of. That's the reason that I wanted to join, was because of working with people and because I wanted to
Oh.
lead and being a
Oh.
good officer.
Oh.
Um, And doing all that research, I think, helps because it's and talking to people is a big important part of that. Talking to
Mm.
previous people who have served is a great way to do that. And they also offer like webinars, seminars that you can join. They usually recommend that you do at least a couple of those in preparation for
Uh-huh.
the OSB because they'll go through common questions that they ask in the
Okay.
interview, and
Yeah.
they'll get you to work as a team on like a Zoom session. They'll get you to work as a
Okay.
team to come up with a solution because you will have to do that in the interview. You will have to work with other people because it's a group-based
Ah,
interview.
a group base. Okay, right.
So um, their expectation is that you're able to work with a group for the first half of the day. So there'll be a group session in the morning, which will usually go for an hour and a half, something like that. And
Uh-huh.
then after that, they'll have an individual interview with just yourself and a panel.
Wow.
Um,
Again, quite
again,
energy consuming on one day, isn't it?
yeah, it is. So in the group interview and in the individual interview, the panel will consist of a senior ADF member, which will be the
Yeah.
president. So that's someone in probably a rank of captain or above in the Navy.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you'll have a specialist, so someone who is, an expert in the field that you're going to that you're wanting to get a job in. So for me,
Yeah.
submarines, they would be an expert in submarines, and that have the technical side
Yeah.
experience, so that they can fact check everything that you say and make sure that you know what you're talking about. And then
Yeah.
there's a psychologist. So the psychologist is usually a
Oh, wow.
civilian contractor who'll sit in,
Yeah.
watch how you behave, how you interact with other people, and then they'll have their own questions for you about your suitability for the ADF, what might challenge you, all those types of questions.
Mm, mm.
Um,
Very
special,
rigorous, Louis. Very
very
rigorous.
quite rigorous.
Yes.
The specialist
Yes.
will ask you the technical questions about maybe how the platforms work, so how aircraft and boats operate. Could be anything from that to um, the the questions that they will definitely ask you, which is where are you going to go for your first 6 months? What does your basic training look like? What will you do on a day-to-day basis at that basic training? What is your primary qualification? What does unrestricted service mean? And um, and then they might get you um, to talk about the current ships in the Australian Navy and what the geostrategic situation of our country is in right now. All these, it's a lot of questions, um,
Yeah.
which I can go through some, what helped me with all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe just
but
give us just a couple of examples
yeah,
as well. Yeah.
um, and then your president will ask the questions about, what the values of the ADF, how have you
Mm,
shown leadership, what's the difference
mm.
between a leader and a manager, what's the difference between a seaman and an officer, all of that stuff. And then they'll put you, and then the psychologist will ask you questions about how you're going to deal with sea service, what are you going to do to deal with long distance, all of that sort of stuff. So
Oh, so
it's quite
then a little
comprehensive.
bit personally about yourself, like,
Mm,
right. Okay.
yeah, and then for the group interview at the start of the day, they're
Yeah.
looking for how you can talk in front of an audience.
Okay.
So they'll usually ask you to give a presentation on a random topic that they choose on the day.
Okay.
And you have to speak fluently about it and create a cohesive
Yeah.
argument
Something
about it for two
interesting.
minutes. Something, well,
Okay.
I think it
And
could
do you
be
get to
anything.
prepare, or is it a
Oh,
case of you're
that
standing there and Louis, the talk about how to prepare for an overseas trip. I'm just using a bad
no,
example, but
that's a great example because it's not uncommon for a question like that to be asked,
okay.
and you won't have any preparation other than if they do recommend taking breaks between answering questions. So once you
Okay.
hear a
Yeah.
question, don't be afraid to take a 20-second pause just to
Pause.
think it over, and then express, your answer. So that's a good question. That's something like that. They just want to make sure that you are comfortable speaking in front of a crowd and that you can do
Yeah.
it. And that you have, there's a logical flow to your argument, and you don't get overly intimidated.
Are there any techniques or tips that you can share about how you mentally do that on the
I
spur of the
think
moment?
practice. They have it.
Yeah.
They have webinars and seminars where you can do that sort of thing. So
Okay.
they'll get volunteers just to rattle off a
Throw topics.
throw topics, just speak. Give me, a reason for why we should choose to change the value excellence in the ADF to compassion or something. And then you have to
Right.
talk about that for 2 minutes. And
Right.
those sort of things are great to do in preparation for that.
Yeah.
The other thing is just take your pause, take as much time as you need before you start talking, because once you start, the idea is that you need to keep talking, and you don't
Yeah.
really want to have to fumble over your words as you try and create uh, create an
A
argument in your head.
2-minute little spiel.
Yeah. Um, then in the next part of the group stage is a group activity. So they'll usually get you to work in a group to solve a problem, and they'll put you in a breakout room where they can still hear you talk, interact with each other. And then at the end, they'll ask for one of you to present. And the key thing here in the group, the way, what I went in thinking about for this group interview was that they don't necessarily want to hear the loudest voice. They
No.
don't need to hear the best argument. They just
Yeah.
need to know that you can act um, considerate around other people and bring the quietest voice to light.
Yeah.
So what I went in with, my strategy was just to sort of to judge, to not judge, but to look at everyone in the room, sort of
Uh-huh.
figure out who had a tendency to stay quiet or to
Uh-huh.
maybe, get drowned out by other um, uh, other people's contributions. And then when I had a moment, I'd interject what my own thoughts, and then
Views.
ask
Yeah.
them to to talk about what they thought, or praise them and praise other people for their contributions, and then maybe suggest an alteration, or just feed in why you think that idea is good based on your perspective. So the idea is that you're always positive in
Uh-huh.
public,
Uh-huh.
and uh, this is something that you get into with leadership, is you kind of want to praise in a group setting, and then if you want to take someone aside and help them improve, critique in private. And that's kind of in the group setting, you really just want to praise people for their contributions and make sure that the person that doesn't speak as much has an opportunity, to express what they think and give them space to do that. So that's what I went in with, because I knew
Uh-huh.
there'd be people that are going to talk, and there's probably people that have better ideas than I do, and that's okay. They don't want someone who's a genius problem solver, because if they're a genius problem solver and they can't respect other people, it's not a good job for them. So
Um,
that's the advice I'd give: is you don't have to come up with the best ideas or speak the fastest. Just make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak, and praise them for their contributions. Um,
yeah.
so that's the
Spoken like
advice
a
I
true
give.
leader and
Well,
spoken like
yeah.
a true leader.
Thank you. Um, and uh, that pretty much at the end of that activity, um, you'll basically log off, and they'll give you a time to come back into the Zoom meeting when they have
Okay.
your individual interview. And I'd say before we move on to the individual, that one big part of the group interview is at the start. You have
Yeah.
to present yourself, and you have to give a 2-minute speech about who you are, and what you do, and uh, basically an introduction. They don't tell you what sort of to
What to
talk about.
say. Yeah.
You don't have to talk about your motivation for joining in that space, but it's probably
Mm-hmm.
good to talk about reasons why, talk about things that you're doing currently that make you a good candidate. So
Candidate.
I,
Yeah.
I talked about how I was from Tasmania. I talked about, how I studied in engineering. And then I talked about my other extracurricular stuff, how I was uh, a instructor for my local karate school, and how I worked as a high school maths and science tutor. And I enjoyed and loved mentoring my students, and
Mm-hmm.
they look for words that relate to leadership. So if you can
Yeah.
tie any leadership position into your introduction, that's a big tick. That's good. And it's also good to rehearse that. You should just know it.
Just
You
come
should be able
off.
to reel off your introduction like it's, because that's the one thing you can prepare for. So you may as well overly prepare for it
Yeah.
and
Well, you
be
know the
super
words,
calm.
but you can bring the energy and who you
Yeah.
are behind the words. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good tip. Very good tip there. Um, Gosh, I am exhausted just thinking about how long this whole process has taken from we're now in 2025 and you
Mm.
started this application process in 24, beginning of
2024.
20, yeah, beginning of 2024. So we're talking a year
Mm.
now from where you are. Okay. So
Yeah.
February of 2024.
Quite a long
And
time.
yeah, and all the preparation, and I guess each step brings a new level of stress and preparation. But each step also, I'm hearing, is it's actually honing your deep passion and purpose is
Mm.
really aligning with you, is what I'm
It
hearing as
is.
well. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, for the individual interview,
Uh-huh.
they want you to know how you're going to cope with your service life.
Uh-huh.
So having an activity like journaling, like especially doing something that, like exercising, running. Running for me was a big one. So
Uh-huh.
for the psychologist questions where she asked about how am I going to deal with sea service, how am I going to deal with the sacrifice of my job, you want to have an answer prepared where you can talk about doing some sort of reflective exercise. In my
Uh-huh.
case, was journaling, and something that sort of uh, you know is good for your health and fitness. And I said running. So that's something that I'd prepare for. I'd think about.
Yeah.
The president will ask you questions about who you are, why you're good for the role, what your values are. Find an example of something you've done in your life that aligns with ADF values, or
Uh-huh.
introduce your own value that you think would be good and would be something they're interested in for their candidates. So for
Yeah.
me, it was I'd run ultra marathons before and I'd completed my black belt training. So I thought perseverance is probably a value that summed me up pretty well. And I use that in my interview to talk about how I usually I stick to things and I want to see them to the finish. And they're looking for stuff like that because the training's quite arduous. And
Yeah. Well, the interview
the
selection process
the
is
application
arduous.
is arduous. So
They're
yeah, so
warming
that
you up.
exactly. So stuff like that. It's good to have an idea of your positive characteristics that you've um used in your life that relate to ADF values, or things that would make you a better candidate.
Uh-huh.
Um, they'll also ask you some trick questions. So usually they'll ask you like, what do you know about boats? Why should you be on a boat? And don't get
Mhm.
intimidated by that because they're just testing your nerve. So you just say,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I actually think I may not have the most experience. I haven't sailed on a boat, but I've worked. I live in Tasmania. I'm very familiar with boat culture. My uncle's done Sydney to Hobart's before. I've helped him on his boat. I've taken, voyages on my family and my family's boats, and I'm very acquainted with the water. I've got a scuba diving license, all that stuff. So you just
Yeah.
need to make sure, be confident in yourself, and if they ask you a trick question, don't get intimidated. Um,
Or
and
I guess another angle you could come if you hadn't had that exposure at all. It's about your attitude to learning and
mm,
curiosity to learn, and you could
exactly.
demonstrate it that way.
And
Yeah,
if you generally don't know something, just admit that
yeah,
you don't know it. So
yeah,
if they say, "Look, you missed a year of uni here, or you're only doing part time or something, why are you dropping your academics?" And you say, "Look, um, to be honest, I had this happen, and 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 you can be very frank with them. You don't have to. The main thing is don't lie, and that they will pick up on that, and that they're
yeah.
very on purpose about making sure that you just upfront with everything. Um, so that would be my advice for the president's sort of questions, and then the specialist questions. You just need to know your job role in and out. Like you need to know the day to day. You need to know how you're going to get there, even as much detail as you need to know your superannuation. You need to know what pay you're going to get, what rank you're going to be at certain stages of your career. So what rank you're going to go
Wow.
in as, what
Yeah.
rank you're going to finish after you do your initial basic training, at the end of your primary qualification, what the promotion looks like, what promotion looks like in your role, what benefits do you get. So that's all the numerical, like, sort of
And
financial side of it. And
they
then you need
expect you to know
they
that,
expect you to know that, and they expect you
right?
to know the strategic defence white paper. So
Mhm.
the Australian Defence Force has puts out a white paper usually every 2 or 4 years or so.
Yeah.
They expect you to know what our strategic plan is, our role in the region, where we operate out of, what our current operations are. They have this all on their website as well.
Wow. Okay.
What sort of, what the biggest threats to national security are, and what our capabilities are. So what are our boats look like? What are the classes of our boats? What's the difference between a destroyer and a frigate? What's the difference between a stealth bomber and a fighter jet, or like a general multi-purpose fighter? All that sort of stuff, which is cool. I think that was probably the funnest part of my
I can
revision.
hear it. I can hear it
Yeah,
in you. Whereas
yeah,
for me, I'm thinking, oh my God, how would I even remember half of that?
yeah, yeah. So just be prepared to answer those sorts of questions.
And so, what happens after your officer board selection process there? And I think it's excellent because you've provided some real strategic advice and tips around preparation and the
Mm,
kind of content that I guess anyone listening who might be interested in going down this pathway can focus as well. And also I think you've shared the length of time it takes.
mm.
So use the time wisely. Um, and I think I'm hearing don't cram because
No,
some of this content does take a little bit of reading and comprehension and time to
yeah,
seep
for
in.
sure.
So yeah,
Oh, yeah. I
yeah,
spent I spent a week looking at my strengths and weaknesses. I just write paragraphs on them, refine them, you know, make sure that you know yourself in and out, because they're going to ask questions about that as well. But
yeah.
all of that revision aside, after the OSB, I was very happy with. They give you the outcome immediately. So at the
Okay.
end,
Oh
you'll go
wow,
into a
really?
breakout room. Yeah, they
Yeah.
usually. It's not an outcome of whether or not you get the job, but it's an outcome of how much they recommend you for the job. So
Right.
they'll ask you if you have any questions, and it's a good idea to prepare a question at
Okay.
the end of your interview. So make sure that
Yeah.
you ask a good question. Mine was about because you go into a merit pool after the interview, which
Yeah.
sort of decides, um, you know, where you are against other candidates. So I
Yeah.
asked about a question about the merit pool,
Uh-huh.
and then a question about, when's the earliest I can get started. So show some eagerness. It's good. And then they asked you if you want to say, like, have a closing statement. um,
No.
to the board. And my interview went quite well. And so I was feeling a little cheeky and I said, I'll see you on deck. And they all laughed at that. So you can say, I mean, be confident in yourself. But yeah, make sure you have a question and you don't have to have a statement or anything, but just know that they might ask you for it.
Well,
And they'll give you,
I think that statement showed, well, your personality. You've got a sense of humor, but also I think underneath that following on from the when can I start was I'll
mm,
see you on deck. It's like it's an affirmative.
it is.
I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Um, and then they separate you into a breakout room, and then they
Uh-huh.
talk about how you did in the interview, and then in the group interview at the beginning of the day, and then
Right.
they'll make a decision, and they'll bring you back in and say, look, we recommend you for this role, or we highly recommend you for this role.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then they'll give you some extra material to go over if they think you're lacking in some areas, which
Okay.
it's just good just to go over
Yeah.
before you
Good feedback.
for your next stage. So
Yeah.
that's that OSB. Once that's done, it's kind of like light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
There's an
I
end
would
in
hope
sight.
so.
Yeah. So that was a nice moment for me because I was quite happy with my OSB. Then after that, I have you needed a security. You need to get your security
Oh, to do
clearance.
your security clearance? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and usually the way they do it is it takes a lot of time for your application to go through.
Yeah.
So if you even if you needed the highest security clearance for your job role, they might only get you to get a baseline or so in this interim period. And they just want to vet you, make sure you don't have any criminal history,
Uh,
make sure you're honest as well.
uh-huh.
Um, and and in the waiting period for my application, I went through the process of getting my um, uh, my negative vetting security clearance. So
Uh-huh.
that's a different process that's taken by a contractor. Usually the government, the Australian vetting agency will contract uh, another security company to do those interviews.
Okay.
Um, and that's a whole separate thing. That in itself is a 3-hour interview, usually, typically.
Wow. Wow.
And it's more intense for the higher you go up. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do more of those interviews at some point. And they
Yeah.
bring in family members, they call up your friends. You need to give them, contacts for people that they can talk to get a personal reference, personal,
To validate, I guess, what you're
validate what
saying.
you're saying.
Yeah.
And then there's
And that you're
also
not
another,
hanging around dodgy people.
yeah. And there's also a big lot of documents that you need to submit online as well.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's a separate thing, but it's all part of the process. Don't be afraid of it, and as long as you're honest, that's all they're looking for. They'll ask some pretty personal questions, but just honesty is key, and they don't tell you to prepare for it because you can't really. And
Yeah.
as long as you recognize that what they're looking for is just someone who's genuine and who's honest about what they've done. It doesn't matter, really what you've done as long as you talk about it openly and honestly without um, hiding it. They'll respect that, and yeah, and it'll be okay. So that's that process, and it'll vary depending on what role you're going for. But um, yeah, it usually will involve an interview. And then after that, I got my offer around August 2025. So if you
Wow.
think about, yeah, it's start Feb 2024,
Yeah.
August 25. It's a long process.
Yeah, nearly
It takes
over
a while.
18 months. Over 18 months. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, that's congratulations.
yeah, thank
That's
you.
awesome. And so what role did you end up getting, Louis?
So I'm going in as a nuclear submariner officer on
So
the
you got
new submarines.
your first preference after your pivot when that
Yes,
role or pathway got released.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
So
awesome.
very, very happy and excited about that. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hard work, um,
It's
especially
just
over that
beginning. It's just beginning,
summer. Oh,
right?
it is. It is just beginning. but yeah, the application process, don't be daunted by, the amount of work. It's just a step by step. Just take every day as it comes. And it's, yeah. Yeah. So that basically sums up my path in the last few years.
Yeah, wow. It's a fantastic story. And I think when I reflect on our conversation, it's not only, I think, when you shared that story about your teacher in year 8,
Mm,
who, for some light bulb moment, it struck a chord with you about your aptitude to have a belief in yourself,
yeah.
which has led you to where you are today. But I think also it really shows that you've been consistently um, working towards a goal, but also you've been growing and learning about
Mm.
yourself as you've gone. And
Oh yeah.
I think it's amazing. And how old are you?
23.
23. I'm going to say there are 56-year-olds who haven't got their shit together the way you have. So amazing that you are starting off. And I think this is what I'm really learning by talking to your age group, the Gen
Mm,
Zs, that you're fierce on purpose and your value process is so important to that first step that you're wanting to make in your professional careers, whatever that is. Um, and I think what I've heard you talk about is absolutely inspiring for anyone who might be considering not just a pathway into the ADF or into the Navy in particular, but
mm,
I think it shows also um, if you've got something in mind that you want to do and you've definitely showed your passion, that there's so many things that you can be doing to really hone that through the discovery process, meeting people, and really then understanding a lot about yourself as you go through that, what sets you on fire.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so awesome. I'm so happy for you
Oh,
and
thank you.
really exciting times ahead. I can't wait to catch up with you at some point in the future
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
when
that
you
would be
come
good.
out of that submarine and you have
Yeah.
got time on land.
True.
And yeah, just track how you're going. And I'm sure the start of it will be absolutely amazing. And you will be a great leader because you're already demonstrating. And I've heard just by the way you're talking, and it's clear that you really do have a passion for making a difference, not just for the country, but I think for the people around you as well.
Mm.
So
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
so
Thank you,
much.
Romaine. No, thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me.
Oh, no, it's been a pleasure. So, Louis, thank you for sharing your story. And I know you've talked about from engineering lectures to the whole arduous process of the interviews that you've gone through. But your journey is definitely a powerful example of how curiosity, courage, and commitment can shape the start of a meaningful career. And I think, especially for you, it wasn't a linear pathway, and I'm sure it's not going to be.
No, no, it was definitely not.
No. And to all our listeners, adulting isn't about having all the answers. And I think we've heard that today. But it is about asking better questions, really listening and honing into your values, and taking the next right step, even when you're a bit unsure. So thank you for tuning in to Major in Adulting. And if this episode gave you something to think about or remind you that you're not doing this alone, hit follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Share it with someone who's finding their own way. And remember, adulting isn't about having it all figured out, but it is about finding your way together.